Are you sick and tired of getting beat by players using modded controllers, or even worse, mouse and keyboard users on console? Do you rage hard and call them cheaters for using these devices, as you feel it gives them an unfair advantage over you? Oh, they're all back there. There's about 5 of them back there. They all switching squads and
oh my
they're all back there. Certainly not my best moment caught on stream, but we've all been there. But what if I was to tell you that they might not be cheating by using these input devices? No. What if using these devices is perfectly fine? Stick around to find out if that is or is not the case, as I go into depth around this controversial topic and try and clear the air about whether these are allowed on console. Hey everyone, welcome back. First off, I'm going to keep my own personal views out of this until the very end. Most of what I am going to explain I have tried to keep as objective as possible, but some interpretation is required. Be sure to watch the whole video before leaving a comment, as much of what I am going to say you may not like until it has been fully explained. It is important that you have all the information before judging for yourself. So let's get started. Third-party devices such as the CronusMax, the Apex, or other third-party modded controllers, is using them cheating? Well, first of all, what is a third-party device? A third-party device is a piece of hardware developed by another company independent of the primary product used by the consumer. So take the PlayStation 4 as an example. A third-party device is a piece of hardware not developed by Sony for use with the PS4. These could include an internal and external hard drive and other peripheral devices such as controllers and mouse and keyboards. There are many others, but are all these third-party products allowed to be used with the console they were made for? Here is Sony's terms and conditions on this stuff. You may not use, make, or distribute unauthorized software or hardware, including non-licensed peripherals and cheat code software, or devices that circumvent any security features or limitations included on any software or devices in conjunction with PSN services, or take or use any data from PSN services to design, develop, or update unauthorized software or hardware. Well, that whole paragraph is a bit of a mouthful, but here are the key parts highlighted on screen now. You may not use unauthorized hardware, including non-licensed peripherals. So that's made it a little bit easier to determine. So Sony is saying here that some third-party devices are fine as long as they are authorized and or licensed by them. Let's take a look at what types of products are licensed by Sony for use with the PS4 and some popular devices that are not. The devices being looked at are input devices. On screen now you have a few third-party devices that are allowed as set out by Sony's terms and conditions. The Nikon Revolution Pro, the Razer Raiju, the Hori Onyx, the Scuf Vantage and the Hori Tac Pro are all devices that Sony are seemingly happy to allow to be used on their console. Now let's take a look at ones that are seemingly not allowed. This includes all other Scuf controllers, AIM controllers, Evil controllers, the Strike Pack, all Zim devices, all CronusMax devices, the Venom X4 and the Titan 1 and 2. Now, some of these may surprise you. There are quite a lot of very popular branded controllers there that are technically not allowed according to Sony's terms and conditions. Take the Scuf for example. Unless Sony has said to Scuf that they authorize their controllers to be used but not officially licensed by them, then technically they do not allow them to be used with the PS4 as set out in their terms and conditions. It's a weird one, isn't it? Looking back at the terms and conditions once again, there are two ways that devices are not allowed. Again, I have highlighted these to make it easier to see. They can either be unauthorized and or unlicensed. However, the question is, can they be authorized but unlicensed at the same time, meaning they are allowed? That I cannot say for sure just yet. But because they technically are not allowed, is it cheating to use them? No. Clearly not. There are other Pro controllers that are licensed by Sony very similar to these, and allowing those and not others just doesn't make sense, does it? Sony could easily release a firmware update blocking any controllers outside the ones they allow, but they do not do this, as they seem happy enough to allow these despite what their terms and conditions say. Additionally, ESL, the world's largest and oldest esports organisation that holds professional esports tournaments, allows all types of SCUF controllers in their tournaments. There is one weird thing about that though. Despite allowing them, they do say in their forbidden on console rule set that usage of a non-licensed controller is strictly prohibited. It will be penalised with 3 penalty points. Now, remember back, most SCUF controllers are not officially licensed by Sony, so again that's another weird one. In a way, it just highlights why there is so much confusion on the topic. Technically they aren't allowed, but they are used by many, and also in events with no complaints from Sony. But moving on. You're not here to listen about the controller stuff, are you? There are a number of other third-party devices on the not allowed list that cause much heated debate among both casual and competitive players. These 4 include all Zim devices, the Zim 4 and Zim Apex, the CronusMax, the Venom X4 and the 2 Titan devices. For those unaware, these 4 devices are adapters for your PS4 or Xbox One console that enables you to use a mouse and keyboard for any game you wish to play. Some also allow scripts and mods to be used such as rapid fire and no recoil, both with the controller or with a mouse. How is that possible, you ask, whenever you've maybe tried yourself to use your own mouse and keyboard plugged into your console and it did not work? Most games have native mouse and keyboard support disabled. However, these adapters use the original controller's security ID and emulates it. Therefore, the console believes that you're gaming with the controller. So when you want to shoot and hit the left button on your mouse, the controller actually thinks the right trigger on your controller was pressed and fires. These devices are very hard to detect. Some say they can be, and using the example in recent press that the Zim Apex was detected and banned by Epic Games. That is not the case. Previously, native mouse and keyboard and controller players were in the same lobbies. Epic Games changed this and separated them. However, it was found that players would join a lobby with a controller and then switch to a mouse and keyboard. Epic Games eventually realised this and introduced a device check 3 minutes into a game. This check recognised the digital signature of a keyboard attached to a Zim device, not the Zim itself, and they were kicked from that lobby. Players using a Zim and a mouse with some analog movement control were fine and they could play as normal. So what gave rise to Epic Games doing this? Well, the belief among the overwhelming majority of the console community is that these devices give the user greatly improved accuracy over a controller user and therefore gives them an unfair advantage, so they should be banned or put in different lobbies. But what does Sony say about these devices? Well, nothing specifically, so we have to interpret what they may feel about them from their terms and conditions, along with a few other pieces of evidence I have come across. These mouse and keyboard third-party devices fall under the same category as all the other unlicensed products, so that does give the initial indication that they are not allowed. However, all the other unlicensed devices which I previously mentioned and again are on the screen now seem to be allowed, with no complaints from Sony. So why should mouse and keyboard adapters be any different? Oh, because of the greatly improved accuracy and aiming here you say? And if you play on console you should be only using a controller? Fair point. I have no complaints with that. But did you realise Sony have a fully endorsed and licensed mouse and keyboard product on the market, the Hori Tac Pro? They even advertise this on the official PlayStation website as shown on screen now? This product changes everything. It appears that Sony not only are perfectly happy allowing mouse and keyboard to be used on their system, just as they were with all the other third-party controllers, but they are actively encouraging it with this particular product. I know many of you will still not agree with this assessment, so let me prove it to you. What could Sony and Microsoft gain from allowing mouse and keyboard on console? When you ask yourself this question, it starts to make perfect sense. It now opens up another avenue of potential growth as PC gamers move to console due to the rising costs of building a PC, and then PC parts in general are on the rise. The current barrier has always been the fact that a console uses a controller and analog sticks, which is alien to a PC gamer. With this barrier gone, they can now play with the preferred input device. Microsoft are doing the same thing with the Xbox One. They have one of the largest gaming brands in Razer manufacturing them a mouse and keyboard built specifically for the Xbox. The new rumours consoles will also have high refresh rate gaming, so what's to stop them switching over? Not very many barriers are left anymore now, are there? Knowing this, can these adapters be considered cheating by giving the user an unfair advantage like many are claiming? Well, the answer Sony and Microsoft seem to be giving us is no. It's not cheating. Not according to them anyway. Now, before you stop the video to write a comment in anger, do they give the user an advantage with better aim and accuracy? Of course they do. But to Sony and Microsoft, that is not an unfair advantage, as the term unfair indicates cheating, which they obviously do not allow. Recognising both Sony's and Microsoft's stance on this issue is very important, because what they believe comes above all else, including game developers. Many game developers have contrasting views when it comes to mouse and keyboard adapters. Let's take a look at how Ubisoft and their game Rainbow Six Siege view mouse and keyboard adapters. On Reddit, the question was asked on what their position on the use of mouse and keyboard was. This was answered by a Ubisoft community developer called It's Epi. She said that they are against it and it should be reported to Microsoft or Sony. The same person also goes on to state that if you purchase the licensed one from Sony, i.e. the HoriTac Pro, it will not work in Rainbow Six. We have disabled keyboard and mouse support. Quite a few game developers also say this. They are mostly against it and make it appear that Sony and Microsoft are also against it by telling users to report suspected mouse and keyboard users. But further on down this same conversation, things become interesting and will support my interpretation that Sony and Microsoft want mouse and keyboard on console. A user by the name of FreshFitness1 asked the following of It's Epi in relation to the HoriTac Pro. Sony have licensed it, but you guys are against it. Now you want people to report to Sony when someone uses keyboard and mouse that they bought from Sony? That makes no sense. A very, very fair point. Meanwhile, another user points out that the HoriTac Pro, which is supposed to be disabled by Rainbow Six Siege, as it's an MnK product, and it was stated by It's Epi, is being used by users in the video with the link, and it clearly is being used. I checked this link. It's Epi seems surprised at this and simply says, "Interesting, thanks." It's Epi then comes back with the following response, which I am going to break down into two parts. No, the Sony licensed one registers as a different input. So, the HoriTac Pro does not appear as a regular mouse and keyboard input to the game, so therefore Ubisoft cannot disable it, as Sony have not provided the tools to do so. Console manufacturers give certain options to game developers who make the games for their console. One such tool is to allow or not allow native mouse and keyboard support. Most switch it off, as I previously mentioned. But what happens when a mouse and keyboard product, such as the HoriTac Pro, does not have that traditional mouse and keyboard input, so cannot be switched on or off? Sony have done this for a reason. They do not want game developers stopping this product from being used. That is why it does not appear as a traditional mouse and keyboard product to game developers. The second part of It's Epi's comment is a little bit confusing. They state that the input is disabled in Siege, utilizing an unlicensed product does not work in the same way. When he says that input is disabled in Siege, he is not talking about the HoriTac Pro input, but it comes across that way. He is talking about regular mouse and keyboard input and unlicensed mouse and keyboard products, which they can disable. Well, the ones that do not appear and hide as a controller input, such as the Zim or Cronus. Its Epi's comments just highlight how game developers dance around this topic of mouse and keyboard adapters on console. They never give clear information, and in fact by saying report it to Sony or Microsoft, they give the wrong indication that they have the same views. They do not. Developers cannot really do anything about it. It's all down to the console manufacturers, Sony and Microsoft. The next two pieces of evidence will also support this. You have the people at Blizzard who obviously made Overwatch. They believe in the following. The Overwatch team objects to the use of mouse and keyboard on console. We have contacted both first-party console manufacturers and expressed our concern about the use of mouse and keyboard and input conversion devices. We have lobbied and will continue to lobby for first-party console manufacturers to either disallow mouse and keyboard and input conversion devices, or openly and easily support mouse and keyboard for all players. I encourage you to reach out to the hardware manufacturers and express your concerns, but please do so in a productive and respectful way. Here, the first-party console manufacturers are Sony and Microsoft that he is talking about. The Blizzard representative is effectively acknowledging that they cannot do anything about it and that players must contact Sony and Microsoft to change their minds on what is and what is not currently allowed. Notice how he says reach out and not report users. I think this is a fairly accurate representation of the current situation. Compare this to the contrasting comments of a PUBG community manager. Now firstly, PUBG probably has one of the largest communities against mouse and keyboard on console. The game has no aim assist, and as such Zim users, CronusMax users have a bigger advantage over say other games which may have aim assist. When the PUBG community manager was asked what they are currently doing about this was his answer. We have been gathering in-game information regarding third-party device usage over the past few months. Although usage of these devices is statistically very low, fair gameplay is core to our experience, and we will be communicating our plan to curb the use of these devices soon. Well, what a statement to make. Firstly, that statement was just over 1 year ago, and so far no plans on what they plan to do on these devices has been made. Well, I wonder why that is. You can make your own mind up about that. They seem to be acknowledging that they can not only detect these devices, but they are actually able to stop them from being used if they choose to. That statement is a very bold thing to say, and so far, due to the lack of a follow-up statement or any follow-up proceedings to stop these devices, it just seems to me that this was made to appease players at that point in time. It gives false hope and is counterproductive in the long run. This again is why there is so much confusion. So many game developers are saying different things. We can detect them, we can ban them, we cannot do anything about it. You need to contact the console manufacturers. You need to report players for using mouse and keyboard. Game developers just need to man up and admit that it is out of their control, just like a DICE game developer for Battlefield has admitted. JJJU states that the game doesn't support native mouse and keyboard on console. Mouse players use hardware devices which emulate the controller, thus the game reads regular controller input, and since they emulate controller, all the turning speeds they do with the mouse can be done with a regular controller too. Regardless, and here is the important bit, if you don't like such hardware, you need to convince Sony to not allow it. And that is the current situation we are in. I think I have provided enough evidence to show that Sony and Microsoft have differing opinions on these devices from game developers, and that is what matters, not the game developers. They have to follow both Sony and Microsoft's position on this, and for all evidence, that position points to the fact that they are okay with it, for now at least. That position could change of course as these companies bring out their own mouse and keyboard products and they no longer want competing competition and look to ban them. But that ban will never come because they find mouse and keyboard or pro controllers cheating. The console landscape is changing and these devices are seemingly becoming more and more popular. You no longer even have to sit at a desk to use your mouse and keyboard. They now have a device called a Couchmaster where you can be sitting on your couch with your mouse and keyboard resting on top of this. Instead of reporting players for using these, instead let Sony and Microsoft know your concerns about them. That is a far bigger likelihood of being listened to. Reporting players is wasting your time. They will not be banned for using a mouse and keyboard adapter. Now, saying that, can using any of these third-party devices ever be considered cheating by giving the user an unfair advantage? Yes, there are instances of where this is the case. The first relates to competitive play, and I will again use ESL and their rules. Usage of all console keyboard adapters is strictly prohibited. It will be penalised with 6 penalty points. There are other competitive organisations that set out similar rules in that using mouse and keyboard adapters is strictly prohibited, and as such using such devices versus controller users is giving an unfair advantage and therefore cheating. Another instance that is seen as cheating by EA is the use of mods, certain macros and scripts. Mouse and keyboard adapters as well as some controllers can have these loaded onto them and adjust it when needed. Such things as the CronusMax, the Titan 1, the Titan 2 are all capable of doing this. These include auto fire, which turns a semi-automatic rifle into a full auto one, and zero recoil mods resulting in no recoil. Scripts can be loaded onto the device so that auto spots every few seconds without the need to press the button. These scripts, macros and mods change the in-game mechanics in a way that was not intended, and in my interpretation could fall under the part of Sony's terms and conditions regarding cheat codes and forbidden software, as usually the mouse and keyboard adapter also needs to be attached to a PC for the script software to work. Macros and scripts are not allowed on many PC games, so why should they be allowed on console?
However, they apparently seem to be. Both Sony and Microsoft have controllers on the market which have these functionalities, such as rapid fire, auto spot. The Xbox One Elite controller, as well as the controller Sony endorse, the NAC on Revolution Pro, both have these functionalities. Why they have these, I do not know, because on PC, using these types of things, macros and scripts, is not allowed. Mods, scripts and macros seem to be much more of a grayer area when it comes to console gaming. But anyways, back to ESL.
ESL have also forbidden this and state, if a licensed controller has a macro turbo autofire option, it cannot be used during league play, otherwise it will be penalised with 6 penalty points. And finally, let's look at what EA's terms of service which governs your access and use of their products. We have all agreed to these to play their games. Remember that wall of text when you first load up an EA game? That will have included this. You agreed that you would not use exploits, cheats, undocumented features, design errors or problems in an EA service. I believe that would include the use of mods, macros and scripts in their games. As I said before, PC players get banned for it. It should be no different on console. I understand that scripts are sometimes made for people with disabilities, but these are mostly abused by healthy individuals looking an advantage. So there you have it. According to the console manufacturers, the Pro controllers as well as MnK adapters appear to be allowed, but when used in competitive events or when used with scripts, mods and macros, these could be considered cheating. Of course, many will see it all as cheating, particularly the mouse and keyboard adapters, but there is nothing that can be done about that unless Sony make changes. They view them as being okay, so those cannot be considered cheating on their own.
My own personal feelings on it is I do not mind Pro controllers with extra paddles and extra buttons, but the mods and scripts should never be allowed in casual or competitive play. The mouse and keyboard adapters I am even less a fan of. I do not like them on console, but they are there and I deal with it. But if native MnK was ever supported in PS4 and these players were in the same lobbies as controller players, I would be raising hell. No way. No way can that ever be allowed. I can understand why some use mouse and keyboard adapters. They may be really bad with a controller and cannot afford a PC to play with what they're used to. Or they have a disability which prevents them from being able to use a controller. I hope this video has shown you a bit more clarity regarding the use of third-party controllers and mouse and keyboard adapters on console. Specifically, what the views of the console manufacturers are and why the uncertainty around them being allowed is still around and it still exists today. Their views conflict with many of those who make games for their console in that they are happy with MnK, but many developers are not. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you are interested in more of this type of content, just let me know in the comment section below. But before I go, gameplay has been going on in the background of this video for the past 26 minutes or so. Notice any changes during it? Let's have a quick look back. Here is some gameplay from the first part of the video. And here is some from the second part. Look any different? I went and bought myself a mouse and keyboard adapter for this video. But the video has went on too long, so I'm now going to divide it up into two different parts. In the next video you're going to see me show you what these devices can actually do, and if a controller user can ever compete with one. I am a fairly skilled controller user. Let's see what happens in the next video. I've also got a small poll going in the top right. Please vote in it, let me know your input type. I do not see any names or who voted for what. Likes and subs are also greatly appreciated. Catch you in the next stream or video. See you later folks.